let's call this the forgotten about book haul. Basically, the story goes that a few weeks ago a friend of mine said she was getting rid of some books and did I want to go around and pick some because she had some that she thought that I would really like, and of course the answer was yes. But I didn't want James to know that I was bringing more unread books into the house, so I put these books into a box and then I hid them, and I hid them so well that I actually forgot that I had them. And then last week I was in a used bookstore with James and he handed me a book and said, "Oh, I really think that you will like this book." And I was like, oh, I already have that book. Except I don't know where that book is because my friend gave it to me, and so we have the book haul that I forgot about. Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. If you watch the intro then you will know that today is going to be my forgotten about book haul. Some of these books are new and some of these books are new to me but have been around for a very long time, so let's just jump straight in. So first up we have The Tiger's Wife, and I'm not even going to attempt to say this author's name, so I'll just zoom in and show it you there. So this is a book that has a dual timeline. In the present day we're following a young woman who is working as a doctor visiting orphanages in the Balkans following the war, and while she's out there she receives word that her grandfather has died, and his death is kind of shrouded in mystery, and his story as she begins to uncover it takes place during the Second World War, and it has something to do with a tiger that escaped from the zoo, and I really don't know anything more than that, but I think that it sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really intriguing premise, and I'm interested to see how the tigers kind of fit into the backdrop of the Second World War, so yeah, one that I'm very excited to try. Next up we have White Teeth by Zadie Smith, and would you believe that I have never read any of Zadie Smith's work? I believe that this was her debut novel and I think that it won a whole host of awards, and I have seen so many people sharing about Zadie Smith on Instagram and BookTube, but I've just never picked up one of her novels. So when I saw that my friend was getting rid of this one, I grabbed it off her shelf, and basically this is the story of two families in North London. I believe that it covers 3 generations, various cultures, and that it dives into topics such as love, friendship, family, and all that kind of thing all mixed in. So another one that I'm really excited to try, simply because I've never ever read a Zadie Smith novel, but I hear so much praise for her stuff, so again really excited to try this out. Then we have Emperor of the Eight Islands by Leanne Hearn, and this is a book which is steeped in Japanese culture, and I am so excited to read it because I have never read anything set in Japan before, and I'm not going to attempt to summarize it because I feel like I would say the names completely wrong, but I'll just tell you that on the back it says that it is a novel full of drama and intrigue and an enthralling epic adventure. So I have never come across this book before, but when I saw it on a shelf I just thought that it sounded so interesting, and I'm really just excited to read something set in a culture that I haven't really been exposed to before. It just sounds really exotic and I'm very excited to try it. Then we have Sydney Chambers and the Shadow of Death by James Runcie, and this is a book from the Grantchester Mysteries series, again something that I haven't come across before, and I believe that this is kind of a cozy murder mystery. Sydney Chambers is a clergyman or a vicar in Grantchester who also works as a reluctant detective, and I kind of feel like it's going to be a hijinks, high japes kind of story where he has to solve all these various things that relate to his flock, and yeah, I'm just really excited to try it. I love cozy mysteries, and I think that this one is going to be right up my street. Then we have Daughter of Fortune by Isabel Allende, and this is about a young girl called Eliza who has grown up in an English household in Chile. The book is set around the time of the American Gold Rush, and Eliza falls in love with a revolutionary young man and kind of gets swept off her feet and out of the very formal life that she has known, and then this young man goes missing, and Eliza, in love, decides that she is going to go and try and find him and ends up stowing away on a ship, and heading towards the frontier town of San Francisco. So again, a really exotic backdrop. It's a historical novel. It's one that I'm not familiar with. It's a setting that I'm not particularly familiar with. I've never read anything set during the American Gold Rush, never read anything set in a frontier town, and I'm not certain that I've ever read anything set in Chile. So 3 things about this book that have really intrigued me, and I love historical fiction, and I particularly love historical fiction with an exotic backdrop, so another one that I cannot wait to try out. Then we have The Dice Man by Luke Reinhardt, and my friend gave this to me and said that it was something of a cult novel and that people either really love it or they really despise it, and she thought that I might be quite interested to read it for myself. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether this is an autobiographical novel or whether it's fictionalized, because the protagonist shares the name of the author and the back of the book is not particularly helpful. Neither is Goodreads if I don't want to see any spoilers. So I'm not really sure. It just says on the back, Luke Reinhardt is a psychiatrist, a husband and a father. His life locked down by routine and order until he picks up the dice. Funny, shocking and subversive, The Dice Man is a cult bestseller and a way of life. So probably it's better that I go into this not knowing too much about it, but equally I don't know whether it's fiction, whether it's a thriller, whether it's true. I'm not really sure, so hopefully I'll get round to picking this up. But if you've read it, because my friend was quite certain that lots and lots of people would have read it and I'd never even heard of it, so if you have read it and you can maybe give me a bit more background on it without spoiling anything, then do let me know, because it's one that has definitely caught my attention and intrigued me, and I think any book that is a cult classic is always going to be an intriguing concept. So yeah, another one. I know I've said this about all of them, but this is another one that I'm looking forward to picking up. Next up we have The Stone Diaries by Carol Shields, and this is the story of Daisy Goodwill, a 20th century pilgrim, and I believe that this is told in the style of an autobiography, so literally beginning with Daisy's birth and then flashing forward to 90 years later at the very end of her life, and it just says on the back that she struggled to find her place in the world, listening, observing, becoming a witness to her own life and death in a rich tale that reflects and illuminates our own unsettled era. This is one that I hadn't come across before. It's got fairly good reviews on Goodreads, so I'm just intrigued to see what I think about it. Then we have a book which was sent to me for review by Alma Books, and I'm going to be reading this with the kids because it is a children's book, and that is Jack Fortune and the Search for the Hidden Valley by Sue Perkis. This is a book that I've received just recently, and it's the story of an orphan boy called Jack who is basically thrown out of his aunt's house because he's too naughty, and he's sent to live with his bachelor uncle Edmund, and they go on this terrific adventure which involves sailing to India, crossing the jungle, climbing mountains, and then returning to London to present all the things that they have discovered. And I just think that this sounds like such a fun novel. It's a children's novel, it's not very long, and I love the fact that it has such an exotic backdrop. So yeah, we are going to be reading this very shortly, and I'm sure that I will review it for you in due course. Okay, moving on, we have the books that I picked up in the used bookstore. So these are slightly more modern than the ones that I've just mentioned. First up we have Lie With Me by Sabine Durant, and this is a psychological thriller that I know literally next to nothing about. The back literally says a few little lies never hurt anyone, right? It's been blurbed by Claire McIntosh, and I enjoyed both of Claire McIntosh's novels, but yeah, I think you can't find any information out on Goodreads either. Everything is just super vague, and I kind of get the impression that that's the way that you want it to stay with a book like this. But I've heard people describe this as claustrophobic and creepy and spine-tingling, which is going to be perfect for reading in a couple of weeks, so I'm really excited to read this. Next up we have Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. This is a dark historical novel which is the sequel to Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, which I recently hauled in my Chicago book haul video, which I will link up here and in the description box down below. So this is set during the time of Henry VIII, and as I mentioned in that video, I believe that this has a twist in that it's much more graphic and dark than some of the other historical fiction books set at a similar time. So I saw this in almost perfect condition in the used bookstore. I honestly don't think that it has been read. The spine is just completely intact. And I have a feeling that I'm really going to love Wolf Hall, so I wanted to grab this whilst I could. Next up we have a book which I have ummed and ahed about buying so many times. I have picked it up and put it down in various bookshops since it was released, and that is Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. And the only reason that I picked it up this time is because it's in basically new condition, and it was on offer for like 3 fiction books for £2.75, and I needed a third, so I just thought that I would take a punt. But it's about a marriage and it's told over the period of 24 years, and I think that the basis is that sometimes in a marriage the secrets are what keeps a marriage together more than the truths, and I particularly struggle with books based around marriages. The Versions of Us is one that springs to mind about a relationship that I just didn't get on with, and I kind of get the same vibe from this. So it says on the back, every story has 2 sides, every relationship has 2 perspectives, and sometimes it turns out the key to a great marriage is not its truths but its secrets. So I just don't know. I don't tend to enjoy books about secrets within a marriage because that's not how I live my own life, and I find it really difficult to get on board with storylines like that. But having said all of that, it may turn out that I absolutely adore this book, and I'm very willing to at least give it a try. But yeah, so this one has a bit of a question mark over it, but I thought for the offer that was on in the used bookstore, I may as well give it a go. Next up we have Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simons, and this is a book that came onto my radar because Reagan from the Peruse Project mentioned it maybe a couple of years ago, I think. But I have been on the lookout for it since then and just had given it up as a book that I was never going to be able to get hold of unless I was willing to pay through the nose for it online. It's a book set in Russia during the Second World War. It's the story of 2 sisters, and I think that it also features quite heavily a romance. And Reagan initially, I think, rated it, and then in a later video said that maybe she hadn't enjoyed it as much and maybe it was more problematic than she'd realised. But I like Second World War stories. I love historical fiction. I'm not massively keen on romance, but I thought that I would give this one a go. We can only see with this type of book. The back makes it sound interesting enough that it would grab my attention, but whether I will actually enjoy it or not, I don't know. But it says on the front, a magnificent epic of love, war and Russia. So who can say? Next up we have a book that I was really excited to discover until I got home and realised that it's actually the 3rd book in this series and not the 2nd as I thought, and that is The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and this is the 3rd book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, of which Shadow of the Wind is the first one. Now I read Shadow of the Wind earlier in the year and absolutely adored it, and this book follows the same characters. Now I believe that you can read each book in this series as a standalone book, so you don't need to have read the other ones in order to pick any of these up, and they follow the same characters but each has an independent storyline. So this picks up where Shadow of the Wind left off, but 1 year later. It's set in Barcelona, and we still follow the same host of characters. So I think that technically I could read this book next, but because I'm a stickler for the rules, I think that I will try and pick up Angel's Game, which is the 2nd book, before I pick this one up. But I'm still pleased to have it in my possession. I think this particular cover is so pretty, and yeah, I was a huge fan of Shadow of the Wind. It's an absolute cracker of a book, particularly if you are a reader and have a real passion for the written word. So yeah, I'm really excited to have found this one. It's just a shame that it wasn't Angel's Game, but the 3rd one. So there you go, they are the books that I forgot to haul. If you have read any of the ones that I have mentioned, do leave me a comment down below and let me know. As always, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. Give me the thumbs up if you enjoyed watching, and I will see you all soon.